Hello, so today we're going to be talking about Fast 9 and tips on when to level to level 9. Level 9 is like this giant hallmark benchmark of like, I'm going to be really strong and everything's going to work out. I'm going to hit all my units so long as I can make it to level 9. But in reality, it's often very difficult and very bait to go level 9, especially if you go 9 too early. A lot of times you have to balance your resources of gold and HP, and it's often very difficult to understand where and when you can cap out your board. I'm going to try and answer that a little bit with some examples in this guide. It's a little bit closely related to yesterday's guide, which was talking more about like lobby tempo and understanding lobby tempo. So if you haven't yet checked out that one, please make sure to do so as well. Additionally, I'm a small content creator. I make TFT content every single day. So please, if you like my content, make sure to like and subscribe because it does help me out as a small content creator. Additionally, we're almost at our sub goal of 10,000 subs. It's a little bit a ways, but if you would like to enter the RP giveaway for that, once we reach 10,000 subs, we will do a subscriber giveaway. So please make sure to like and subscribe if you so choose. Also, my store, I'm not going to show it in the link today, but you'll see it at the bottom of the screen. Shop.Fenrir's.art if you're interested in ukiyo-e style art pieces, and I'm going to be adding a new art piece every single month, as well as start some wood carvings on both stream as well as on the website. So if you're interested in those type of art projects, make sure to stay tuned for some of those coming up in the future. Now, this is from yesterday's video a lot, but typical strategies when you're playing TFT, a lot of times you have a reroll strategy where you're trying to 3-star up some low cost units and play around those. You're playing around level 8, which is usually playing around 4 cost. That's like the default board that you're trying to play a lot of the times. And then there's like greeting and trying to fast 9. This is the rare strategy, and you should not do this very often. A lot of times it requires you to be high rolling, it requires you to be really strong early, and then you're often sacking your mid game because you're trying to accelerate and try and skip the normal level where everybody is trying to spike and make their boards really strong. You're trying to use your resources from being ahead early in the game to then instantly teleport to a world where you have better shop odds, better potential at better cost units, and higher cost units that cap out your board a lot higher. And that's usually when you're trying to play around 5 costs, and you're trying to play around like a lot of 4 costs on your comp. But it's very difficult to do this because it requires you to be very strong in your early game, and that's why a lot of times your strategy might change throughout the game. You should never lock yourself into any one strategy. You should always think about what your different options are. Unless your spot is really good for something, right? If your spot's really good for reroll and you have like a lot of copies of a unit, like let's say you just start the game off with like 3 Renatas, of course, commit to reroll Renata. If you have like really good spot for 4 cost, you get an early copy of a 4 cost you want to play around, commit to that. But especially when we're talking about Fast 9, you should always be cognizant of what other people in your lobby are doing. You have to be constantly head on a swivel, looking at other people's boards, because your strategy might drastically change on when you're going 9 and your tempo and timing around it. Of course, the end goal for most boards is to just get to the highest level possible, fit as many units on the board as possible. But if you're employing a strategy where you're trying to race yourself to the largest amount of units on your board, often it can backfire and then you just lose a bunch of LP and you just go 8th. So, what is Fast 9? We've been talking about it a little bit, just for the beginners. Fast 9 is basically a general term that you're trying to get to level 9 to roll most of your gold ASAP. The idea is that you want to do your main roll down, or you want to spend majority of your gold on level 9 as opposed to using it at a lower level, right? At lower levels, like, you can use it at level 6, and that's more reroll because you're looking for 2 cost and 3 cost units. If you're rolling all your gold on level 8, typically you're looking for more 4 cost units and 3 cost units and making some sort of board that's around those average cost units. And then if you are going Fast 9, it's usually because you're trying to find or play around 5 costs in addition to 4 costs. You're trying to use those upper, higher quality units in order to structure your board. And that means that you want to do most of your roll down on level 9 to hit those units. Sometimes you roll on 8 and then you go 9 really fast, but it's typically that's like the idea. Often going to level 9, like anything that's late stage 4, early stage 5. If you're level 9, like 5-1, 5-2, or earlier, that's usually what's considered a fast 9. That's what we're normally talking about. Now, obviously, you can be like the fastest 9 on 4-2. I'm level 9, or the fastest 9. I'm level 9 on like yeah. I understand there's different ranges. Typically, above stage 5. Before stage 5 or early stage 5 is considered quote-unquote fast 9ing, or getting to level 9 a lot faster than normal, because often in order to reach that, barring certain conditions or certain augments, you're typically sacking a lot of your stage 4 in order to quickly make it to level 9 on stage 5 and then roll a surplus of gold there. So, when should you fast 9? High rolling. That's it. Done. Thanks for watching the video, guys. Enough said. GG. That's all you need to know. Have fun. You know, it's mostly a joke, but you know what I mean. Like, you need to be ahead. A lot of people try and fast 9 from bad spots. I think this is like a streamer thing as well. I do it myself on stream a lot of the times because I'm just trying to make better content and stuff like that. But a lot of times when you're watching people play, they're just like instantly like, oh, I just go 9 here and I'll just hit everything. And it's like, it's not really real. You have to be ahead. If you're not ahead and you try and go level 9, you're probably going to go bot 4. That's usually what ends up happening, barring certain very, very niche situations. Often, Fast 9 as a strategy becomes more prevalent with specific encounters and augment combos. There's certain encounters that give you a lot of gold. So if you have a huge amount of gold and then you also start the game off with a pretty reliable or pretty strong opener, a lot of times you can accelerate your game and make it to level 9 to roll most of your gold, instead of rolling on a lower cost, instead of rolling for lower cost units or rolling at a lower level. With specific encounters and augment combos, which we'll talk about in a second, you can set yourself up to, you know, race the lobby and try and get to the level 9 as fast as possible. Additionally, I feel like I need to put this here. Like, I don't want to say this in general, but like, if the lobby isn't punishing or you're surrounded by like worse players that aren't like taking advantage of the fact that you're greeding your gold and trying to make it to level 9, then Fast 9 becomes a better strategy. The only reason I'm putting this on the slide, it's not to insult anybody. I've had some really whack comments sometimes. Like, I remember I got multiple comments where I was talking about different comps and I was saying like, hey, you can't really Fast 9, you can't really do this. And people are like, oh, on my Smurf account, I always Fast 9 and I instantly win, so your guide is wrong. Yeah. Like, if you're Smurfing, yes, go level 9 because you're not going to get punished. But, like, it boggles my mind. It's like, the idea of just Fast 9ing off rip is a very poor decision a lot of the times. The only time it really works as a reliable strategy is if the rest of your lobby is just not paying attention to what you're doing. If nobody in your board is spiking their board, let's say like, you know, nobody's making items, they're all holding items on bench. Let's say you're in a beginner lobby. It's like, yes, it's easier to go Fast 9 because you're not getting punished for greeting because nobody is making items and nobody is upgrading their units and nobody even knows what they're playing. So, you know, you with a strategy that even you have a plan to make it to a certain level and play a certain unit in your team planner, of course it's really easy to Fast 9. But that's not what this guide is meant to be. This guide is meant to give you like long-term understanding of like, hey, what are the better spots and what can I do with this? So please, if you're in a situation where you always Fast 9 in all of your games, please note it won't last forever. When you make it to like, you know, Masters, you won't be able to Fast 9 every game. Trust me, like it won't happen. Okay, so like that's what I'm trying to give it so that it's applicable for long-term skills for you guys, so you guys all get to Masters. That's my goal. Every one of my viewers, I want to be in Masters, because if I teach you guys all how to play well in Masters, I won't have as miserable of a time when I'm playing against people that don't seem to know what they're doing in Masters. It's mostly a joke, but you know what I mean. But anyways, Fast 9 is often very bait because you have to have a good spot for it. So some augments in some situations work where you can reliably at the start of a game say, I'm going to Fast 9 this game. And that's usually if you have a high econ encounter and augments that help you to level very effectively. So that's like Scuttle Puddle, gold subscription. You have an insane amount of gold and you just don't know what to do with it. Because everybody has a lot of gold, they'll be able to cap very high. So that's why certain augments like level up, upward mobility. I picked all the prismatic ones because they're flashy, going long. But specifically like even level up, right? This augment is not very good except in Scuttle Puddle. And you hear that, I think like there's more veterans, better players than me that probably explain this already. But sometimes like you should almost never be taking this augment because it just doesn't give you a lot of value and it's often very bait. If you don't have the gold to make use of it, you can't use it to effectively tempo and give yourself better shot odds. And it's the same with a lot of these augments. A lot of these augments that force you to level very aggressively. Maybe upward mobility is the only one. This one's very like nice. I'm gonna put like nice here. This one isn't like a Fast 9 one, but typically with level up and going long, a lot of times you're trying to race to level 9 with these augments, and it only really works if you have a lot of gold for free. Because then, whether or not you high roll or low roll, you'll still be able to make it to those high levels with enough gold to roll down, which we'll talk about in a second or two. But like something like level up, for example, if you don't have a huge amount of gold from like Scuttle Puddle or gold sub or anything like that from the encounter, you'll realize that this augment feels very, very awful a lot of the times, because for a prismatic, it doesn't give you as much as some of the other prismatics that are either combat or econ or other stuff. It just feels like you're a sinking ship, and then you try and make it to level 9, you don't have enough gold to roll, and it's just horrible. That's what I'm trying to get at here. So like, there's certain situations, what I would suggest is like, if you see a high econ encounter and you see something that helps you to level very effectively, then it's a viable strategy to say to yourself, okay, you know what? Let's try and play some sort of fast 9 or really aggressive tempo board. Other than that, you probably should not be looking at saying like on 2-1, I'm going to fast 9, because you have to decide at every stage in the game whether or not it's the right decision to level to 9. And that's what's normally going to happen. You can't just commit to something on 2-1 and say, I'm going to do fast 9, unless it's something like this, which I want to just mention for you guys. Now, why go level 9? Cap out your board high with legendaries, better odds for high cost units, and then you bring out the full potential of certain comms, which we're going to talk about in a second. And these are the questions you always want to ask yourself. I've been saying them a lot. How much stronger does going level 9 make me? We'll come back to the slide, don't worry, that's why we're going a little bit faster. Is it better to use my goalie at a lower level? And what are the risks / can I make it to level 9? Right? Yesterday we talked about lobbies, right? And lobby tempos, and I made this guide yesterday. A lot of it is because I wanted to introduce it in this one. I didn't want to make this video too long. But when you're thinking about your lobby, you have to look at what other people are playing, right? If you're playing in a lobby and everybody is really strong, or there's a lot of rerolls, this is not indicative of fast 9, because you're going to be really weak. You're going to lose a lot of HP. By the time you make it to level 9, you're going to have no HP. And even if you hit your units, one high roller will just send you 8th. So it's very difficult to play if the rest of your lobby is very strong. Now, if your lobby is very weak, or you're the strongest player in the lobby, then you have a potential to fast 9, because you can spike very hard, right? If you're tempoing the lobby, you want to use your gold effectively to continue to tempo. So you want to get higher cost units, 5 costs, upgrades to those 5 costs, because other people that are playing really greedy or lose streaking, they might be able to spike a lot harder than you later in the game by having like perfect items and perfect units and a lot of gold. So a lot of times in these type of lobbies, it's more indicative of maybe I should consider more towards fast 9ing. Now, let's go through examples. So first of all, flashbang, bang. This is going to be a rolling odds. Somebody asked me, I think, I didn't read my comments yesterday, but I think somebody asked me for the link. I'll post it in the comments, but basically, I don't know what the link is. It's some like person's GitHub. I'll just link it to you guys in the comments, what this link is. But I wouldn't play around too much with this. It's just for illustrative examples. But basically what I'm going to do here is this is like a rough estimator of the odds of hitting certain units on different levels based on how much gold you have. So let's say you are trying to look for a 5 cost, right? That's typically what you're doing when you pass 9. You're trying to find 5 costs because the odds are very low until you reach level 5. So your current level 9, and you're trying to find a 5 cost. Now, what's an average amount of gold that you want to roll down when you're rolling for a 5? When you're rolling on any roll down, it's usually around 50 gold. So if you look with 50 gold, you'll see finding 1 copy of a 5 cost, almost guaranteed. It's like an 80% chance. Finding 2 copies of any particular 5 cost, around 40% chance. Finding 3 copies, that's as much as you need to upgrade. Dramatically low, 17% odds. This is why I think a lot of people, like, you're playing the game and there's 8 players in a lobby. There's often going to be somebody high rolling. A lot of times you see people with upgraded legendaries. You see them like even on level 8, they have like a 2-star legendary. You have to understand how high roll that is. It is very high roll to see an upgraded legendary unit, an upgraded 5 cost. If you go level 9 and you roll 50 gold, you are not anywhere close to expecting to hit 3 copies of any particular 5 cost unit. If you up these odds, let's crank that gold until we get to around 50-50, right? You have to roll almost 100 gold to be like at a 50-50 of upgrading a 5 cost. That's like a rough estimator. Obviously, like, there's other circumstances. Here I don't have other 5 costs that are taken out. The odds go up a lot if other people are playing other 5 costs, of course. But I'm just trying to give you an illustrative example. It's a lot of gold. And this is not even accounting the fact that you have to level to 9 in the first place. Now, when you look at the amount of gold to roll down, this is the gold that you're spending on rolling, right? In order to buy a 5 cost costs 5 gold. So not only do you need 100 or 96 gold in order to hit the 3 5 costs, like approximately using like, this calculator, whatever, you know what I mean? you still have to buy them. You need even more gold. And imagine if your units aren't upgraded. Like, imagine if you don't have upgraded 4 costs, you don't have upgraded 3 costs, you don't have upgraded other costs. Everything that you have to spend gold on is in addition to this. And this is just the rolling gold. It's not even the leveling gold. It takes like 80 gold, not 80, but it takes like 78 or something. I forget the number. It takes like 70 gold to get to level 9 from level 8. Do you not see how horrible the odds are for you to find these? Like obviously it's all nice and it's beautiful and you hit your 5 costs, and of course if you're rolling for 4 costs, the odds are incredible. You're almost guaranteed to hit, you know, even with 50 gold. You know, you have really good odds of hitting an upgraded 4 cost unit that you're trying to play around. The odds of rolling on 9 are amazing, right? To play these higher cost boards. But you have to understand, it is expensive. It is so expensive. So a lot of times you have to sacrifice your HP in order to have the gold to do this, in order to actually make it to 9 and roll a decent amount of gold. So many people, they level to 9 and they roll like 30 gold, right? And they're like, oh yeah, I didn't hit anything on level 9. I rolled 30 gold. It's like, yeah, no kidding. Like, what are your odds of finding one? Like a 60% of finding 1 5 cost? Like, you're not going to hit nothing. This isn't even accounting for the fact you have to buy the 5 cost. If you have to buy the 5 cost and you're rolling 30 gold, you're only rolling 25 gold. It's a 50-50 almost. You have a coin flip of actually hitting the unit you wanted, 1 copy of them, right? The gold is insanely demanding, and that's why when you're going level 9, you should always think that. And now that we have like a little bit of a basis, maybe that's not something you've ever thought of it in that way, but I'm trying to give you guys an illustrative example so that when I talk about some of the other stuff later in this video, you're not like, oh man, this guy's full of crap, he doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm just trying to give you like an illustrative example of like what the average case is going to be, just with that calculator, just to like, for funsies, almost like a visual representation. Now let's talk about comps that want to fast 9. So one thing that when we're talking about fast 9ing, we're looking at these comps that are requiring 5 costs, but namely you're looking for a comp. Whenever you think about a fast 9 style comp, it's a comp that spikes with 1 copy of a 5 cost, not with 3 copies, not with 7 copies, not with like 100 copies. You're looking for comps that spike with 1 copy of a 5 cost, and there is one comp that is the comp that you have to play from tempo. You have to be ahead. It is ridiculous if you do not hit the 5 cost. And that's Enforcer. Enforcers is almost entirely dependent on Caitlyn. I made the joke. It's Caitlyn or Aethlyn. You know, if you hit Caitlyn, you win. That's just how it is a lot of the time. This Caitlyn unit with Vertical Enforcer, if you're playing either 6 or 8 Enforcer, is almost entirely dependent on Caitlyn. Now, if you don't believe me, you're like, nah, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm gonna pull some numbers on you. Okay, let's go. 6 Enforcer. Also, I'm not doing this. I'm trying to make it entertaining in the way I talk. Please don't take offense to anything. If you feel like you're somebody that I'm talking about, I'm not actually directly talking about anybody. Most of the people that I'm talking about I've already banned. You know what I mean? Like if I'm ever insulting anybody. Oh great, this isn't working. Let's refresh. But so don't take it to heart, right? Obviously everybody's okay. This is like a learning, trying to make it fun in the way I talk. But anyways, 6 Enforcer, it is trash. 4.5 means that you have a 50-50 of top 4. And if you look at all the 6 Enforcer games, Diamond Plus, you know, I can look at it higher average. GM, this is like closer to Challenger, it averages even worse. Obviously, the lower the skill level of the lobby, like if I lower the skill, it becomes better, but that's because you're not getting punished as hard, right? This is why, because this comp is a very fast 9 oriented comp. It's going to do better in lower elos because that's just how it is. It's less punishing because less people are slamming perfect items, they're not optimizing as much, etc. But let's just put it in Diamond Plus. That's like a good average. It's not very likely that you're going to top 4. It's actually, statistically, you're not going to top 4 if you're playing around 6 Enforcer, according to all the Diamond level players. But something that's really important to look at is these deltas. Look at the number. Like, if you find a Caitlyn, the average placement drops by like 2. That's what that means. So like if you're gonna go 4th with this comp and you find a Caitlyn, all of a sudden you're playing for like a 2nd. Like, obviously that's a bit of an exaggeration, of course. I'm just playing around with the numbers a little bit to make my point seem more exacerbated than it is. But besides the point, undeniably, this comp is very dependent on finding even 1 copy of Caitlyn. And the reason is, if you ever played it, it makes sense, right? If you play Enforcers, you'll see, you find one copy of Caitlyn, this unit does as much damage as the rest of the board combined. I'm not even joking. Like, look at the board, and you'll see that this Caitlyn just instantly does as much damage as the rest of the board. Somebody finding a Caitlyn when they're playing Enforcers, especially if they're 8 Enforcer, right? Especially if they're 8 Enforcer, like they have an emblem. Boop. Boop. It's insane. It's an insane spike. It's an insane spike that you should all consider. So when you're looking at this comp, what you're looking at is, like, let's say you don't have a Caitlyn, right? If you don't have a Caitlyn, your board often looks something like this, and you have some sort of extra unit on your board. A lot of times I end up with like a Gangplank because he just synergizes kind of okay, right? But a lot of times your board looks something like this, roughly, like you have in Bessa, and then you're trying to play like a frontline synergy, and you're trying to play around this Vi. This is the part why the comp is kind of awkward, right? This comp on level 8 is pretty weak. Why is it weak? This unit is good for nothing. This unit is kind of okay if you have him upgraded and you have some items on him. This unit's good for nothing. This unit's pretty good, and of course, if you have him upgraded, he does a lot, right? So, like, it can work out well. There is a TF Loris reroll that is pretty strong, so you can actually reroll these units and play a different variation of this, but that's more towards quick strikers. And this Maddie unit does close to nothing, right? Majority of your damage and majority of your tanking, right? Majority of the damage and the damage blocking on this board is entirely dependent on this Vi unit. That's why this comp is very high roll. And a lot of times you want a fast 9 with it, or you have to be playing it from ahead. Because you want to find a Caitlyn, which is going to be hard to find on level 8, especially if you don't high roll into it. And if you're not high rolling, a lot of times you don't have a Vi 2 star, and then it becomes really awkward to play around. But this is an example of a comp where it's entirely dependent, or not entirely dependent, but it's severely dependent on the 5 cost. So a lot of times you want to race to level 9, or you want to play this comp from ahead because you know that you're going to be really weak. Your damage won't be stable because your frontline unit is basically like this Vi, especially if you don't have a Vi 2. But even if you have a Vi 2, it's hard to stabilize your damage without the Caitlyn because nobody else on your team really does all that much. Maybe TF, maybe Maddie sometimes if you have like a Maddie 2. But like your board doesn't have a lot of threats to it, right? This isn't a threat, this isn't a threat, this isn't a threat. If this doesn't have items, it's not a threat, this isn't a threat. So getting the Caitlyn is astronomically incredibly strong for this board. And a lot of times when you're playing this board, the highest cap version of this board is that you play a lot of extra 5 costs, right? If you have a board that looks like this, I guarantee you're probably winning the game, right? You've probably already won. Because basically like these 5 costs are just so incredibly strong, and Caitlyn picks up the slack, right? Anybody who is close to death will die by the hands of this Caitlyn. Additionally, Caitlyn 2 is a huge win condition, but you're so stable around a Caitlyn 1 that a lot of times just finding the one copy of the Caitlyn makes all the difference for this comp. This is a perfect example of a comp where you only want to play it if you're in a lobby or if you're in a situation where you think you can fast 9. Now, of course, you might not be able to, and it might be a little bit different. There are situations where this does work out outside of fast 9ing, but this is like the idea, right? You want to play this comp from ahead. You want to be high rolling your early game. You want to be high rolling your next stage of the game. I'm going to lower this song just a little bit because I hear a lot of people always complain about it, just in case while I'm talking. But you want to be ahead. And that's what this comp kind of means for like the idea of fast 9ing. Other comps that work in a similar way, there is something like, you know, Rebel, for example. Rebel is very dependent on Caitlyn, so a lot of times you want to play this from more of an ahead spot, where you can play around having a Jinx. Sorry, you're reliant on the Jinx here. Excuse me my language. But you're trying to find this Jinx as early as possible because your damage isn't really stable if you're playing Rebel without Jinx. Now, Rebel itself isn't as strong as some of the other comps. It isn't like the same level as Enforcer and the dependence on Caitlyn because the comp itself is a lot weaker. But without a Jinx, the average of this comp is very poor. It's very difficult to play around. Other comps that really want a tempo and play really aggressively to level up is something like Conquer. Not because of any one particular 4 cost, or sorry, one particular 6 cost, but a lot of times when you're playing around Conquer, you have a Conqueror emblem, right? I'll just take a Jace, for example, right? If you look in the stats of Jace's best item, it's a Conqueror emblem. But a lot of 5 costs really like a Conqueror emblem because it just gives them infinite AD and AP. And if you give infinite AD and AP to a high cost unit, it really strengthens the board. So this board falls off and is very bad. Like I did a Conqueror guide where I explain a lot of this concept, but playing around Conquerors is really bad unless you have a lot of 5 costs, because the 5 costs really bring out a lot of power, and with Conqueror emblems, absolutely destroy the opponent. So if you're playing Conquerors and you're not able to make it like play aggressive tempo, you can't really play this from behind. You have to play it from being ahead because you want to be able to use your gold and your health to make it to level 9 to get some 5 costs. It doesn't have to be an upgraded 5 cost, but it has to be any level of as many 5 costs as possible, because the more that you have, the synergies work really well with the comp, and it brings out a lot more power for the comp, especially if you can hit a Mordekaiser early enough, and then you can drop one of the weaker Conqueror units. But those are like other examples of comps when you're wanting to fast 9 around it, because they spike so hard off of one copy of a 5 cost. Now there are many other examples, and 5 costs are in a very strong position right now. So a lot of comps, they look towards a 5 cost to cap out your board and play for a first. But what I'm trying to explain here is like the comps that desperately need it versus the comps that don't. Additionally, let's talk about upgrading, right? Here's a comp where you might think to yourself, should I fast 9 with it? And a lot of times the answer is no. A lot of times you're better off rolling on level 8. This is scrap. So here I just made a basic scrap board. I just put in 6 scrap and some other synergies in the form of Elise and Vi. Now with this comp, if you look at it, the comp is relatively okay, but it's quite expensive. The reason it's expensive is because we're playing around multiple copies of 4 cost units. We're playing around Echo, Corki, Elise, and Vi, right? These are all 4 costs that cost 4 gold. In order to upgrade each of them, each of these costs 12 gold. 12, 12, 12, 12. Do the math. What is that? 48. This board, if you want to upgrade every single unit, costs 50 gold just with these couple units here. 50 gold just upgrading units. So, you know, that's not even counting the roll down gold. So a lot of times when you're playing around scrap, you want to have a lot of gold and you want to play it from, you know, you can play it from ahead or behind. This comp has a really good way of stabilizing, especially in certain encounters where it gives you a lot of gold and a lot of resources, like Scuttle Puddle, where it gives you lots of items. So scrap is one of the few comps that you can actually play from behind. That's why it's really popular, because you can actually lose streak into playing scrap, and when you lose streak, you have a lot of money. But this comp works out well because like you can stay on level 8 and you have a lot to upgrade on level 8. Now, there is one win condition for this comp, and that is hitting a Rumble. A lot of times hitting a Rumble early is a win condition because Rumble upgrades over time. With Rumble upgrades, often you can win the game very easily, because with Scrap Shield, his Rumble stays alive forever. He continues to use all of his upgrades, and he just pumps out an insane amount of damage. This isn't a comp that you want to fast 9 with almost ever. You never want to fast 9 with Scrap, in my opinion. Of course, you can. In any spot, you can decide that you want to go to level 9 as soon as possible. But here, you're better off rolling really deep for these 4 costs, because you're a lot more stable with your damage if you have Echo 2-star, Corki 2-star, Elise 2-star to stun, even a Vi 2-star. Because a lot of times when you're playing Scrap, you have a lot of items, so you can itemize everybody. And this Rumble only really matters if you find Rumble early. So if you find a Rumble, finding a Rumble isn't the same as finding a Caitlyn. If you just put a Rumble on your board, the Rumble isn't going to instantly do an insane amount of damage, right? It's not like you plop a Rumble on your board and he instantly does like 20k damage. It's not the same as like a Caitlyn with Enforcer. If you make it to level 9 and you just try and rush to level 9 and you just find one copy of a Rumble and don't upgrade the rest of your units, guess what? You're still going to lose the round. These units won't sustain. Because like the main thing that matters is like stabilizing your damage around like specifically Corki and Echo a lot of the time. So this is a comp where, you know, it's very expensive, so it doesn't make sense to go to level 9, because if you go to level 9 you don't upgrade these units, you'll probably never have enough gold to upgrade them. And if you don't upgrade them, they're going to be really glassy. Your Echo is a frontline unit a lot of times, so he's just going to die too soon. He's going to dive the backline and die. Corki, you can put him in the backline, but a lot of times he just takes time to cast, so if your frontline isn't stable and upgraded, then he's going to die, and the Corki's not going to ramp up and do damage. And this Rumble is a frontline unit. As a 1-star, he's not going to live either. He's probably going to die as well. So a lot of times it's very high roll to find a Rumble early, of course, and you always want to hit a Rumble 2-star, and you want to itemize the Rumble 2, and you want to win out for free, but very rarely do you fast 9 with this comp. And that's just because a lot of times it's worth it to roll on level 8. If we flashbang, warning, go to level 8, go to the level odds calculator, right? If you're rolling your odds, right? Let's say you're rolling on level 5, you can roll 50 gold on level 5, and let's say you're going for a 4 cost, right? You'll see that it's very likely that you hit the upgrades, but it becomes very difficult for you to hit the 3 cost upgrades. As opposed to just rolling, you know, let's take 50 and let's add another 70, 130 gold on level 8. the 70 gold that you would spend to level 9, especially if you're trying to level to level 9 early, because like, you know, the later you go to level 9, every turn you gain 2 XP. So like that XP that you gain is equivalent to like 2 gold per round that goes put into that. So that's like a downside to level 9ing. These comps, like it's almost entirely dependent on you to roll earlier to make sure that you stabilize. And that's like the main thing that you have to always consider, is stabilizing early versus late. I recently played a game of Enforcers. I'll go to my channel just to point it out, because I think it was a really good exercise in when to fast 9. Like I talked about, Enforcers is something that you usually want to fast 9 in. The video is right here, the VOD review. If you look at this video, right, I talk about it a lot here. The similar idea that you really want to find a Caitlyn, you really want to stabilize. But if you look at my spot, I don't have that much gold. I don't have that much of a good spot. So I end up rolling really aggressively on my stage 4, because as you can see, my stage 4, I'm losing a lot of rounds. I lost a lot of HP. I don't have a Caitlyn. I don't feel like I'm stable. So I roll really deep here to make sure that I upgrade this Vi, and I upgrade my units, and I pick an anomaly that's a frontline anomaly to keep my Vi alive as long as possible. These are all decisions that I made, because you can't just easily go level 9. And rolling for upgrades a lot of times is way more important, just to decrease the average, right? Or sorry, increase your average placement, right? You can play very first or 8th, just sit there and say, I'm just gonna go level 9, and if I hit, I hit, and if I don't, I don't. And then you're playing with a very thin margin. But a lot of times, it's better just to make sure that you have upgrades. Even if the comp is something that does spike really hard on a Caitlyn, for example, with this comp, you can see that by me rolling early and upgrading, I'm not going to level 9 here. I'm not going to level 9 anytime soon, right? As you can see, I'm still not level 9. Right? I'm 80 gold. I'm rebuilding my econ. I'm not going very fast to level 9. I'm going to go level 9 after the carousel. Right? It ends up that I find an Enforcer emblem. So then I immediately go to level 9 here. And then I roll how much gold? Right? I delay my level 9 to like 5-5. I'm not trying to go really fast. And I roll like, you know, 40 or 50 gold. And then I find my 1 Caitlyn to spike my board. But I made sure that I stabilized first, because look, I even lost a couple rounds even after rolling. You want to make sure that you're not just throwing your game away for the sake of like me win or me lose. So eventually I hit this, and then I hit an Enforcer, and then I just win out the game. I just go first this game, I'm pretty sure. But the idea is that depending on your board, you want to look at it and think to yourself, what are the points where I need to stabilize? For example, let's say you're playing Enforcers, right? You want to fast 9. You want to fast 9 because you want to play Caitlyn, right? Playing Caitlyn, I just explained it to you. You win the game for free. GG. Enforcers is broken. Blah, 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 blah. If you don't have Vi 2, like guys, if you don't have Vi 2 and you don't have like 100 HP, you're going 8th if you don't get Vi 2. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I'm getting really close to the mic because I don't know if it's a secret that you guys, like, I don't know if it's a secret, but like, if this unit dies, you think these chuckle fucks are gonna you think this board is gonna win you a round on stage 4? Really? No, it's not. Right? So a lot of times, that's why I mean that you have to play some of these comps from high roll. A lot of times going fast 9 is because you're high rolling early, right? This is a comp that, like, you know, it's kind of like synonymous with fast 9ing, in my opinion. Like, if I'm trying to talk to a beginner and they're like, well, why would I fast 9? It's like, well, consider Enforcers. Don't you want to fast 9 to find a Caitlyn or whatever? Or like do something like this. If you don't have a Vi 2-star, you're staying on level 8. And that's like a big contention. That's a big problem with Enforcers a lot of the times. But like, that's the idea, right? And it's the same with like a lot of different comps, right? Like, let's say you're playing the game, right? And you have this board, right? Depending on what units you have and how contested you are, right? You have to roll for units, right? If you have like, you know, Echo Pair, Corky Pair, you're not better off rolling on 9 odds to find these guys. You're better off rolling on 8 odds and using the gold as leverage in order to make sure that you're stable. You want to make sure that you're not losing too many rounds. The only time that you sack and you go level 9 instantly is if you are really far ahead, right? Let's say I'm 100 HP and this is my board and I'm 100 HP. It's like, I might consider going level 9 because I'm 100 HP, you know, I have 50 gold. I can make it to level 9 because I can sacrifice an entire stage, right? I can lose 15 health per round and I'll still have multiple lives, right? Like, let's say I'm 100 HP, right? I'm 100 and then I lose 15 per round. Let's say I lose 4 rounds at 60. I still have 40 HP. Let's say I lose 1 more. I still have 25 HP, right? This is me losing 5 rounds, right? That's what often happens when you're trying to fast 9. You're saving all your gold and you're going to roll it later, right? After 5 rounds, right, I'm gonna have 50, right? Let's say I'm 50 gold. I go plus 10 plus 5 gold per round, 15 gold per round. It's like 15 times 5 is what, like I think I did some math wrong here. 25, 35, 55, whatever. It's like close to 100, right? 15 times 5 is 75. It's like a little bit over 100, right? So then 70 gold to level, you have around like 40ish gold, right? You have like 40ish gold to roll, right? This makes sense here because I have 100 HP when I'm starting. If I'm starting this with 50 HP and I do this subtraction, I'm gonna be at 0, right? That's the idea. That's the point that I'm trying to make. It's like you have to count every time that you're not rolling and not upgrading units. You have to scout the rest of your lobby and say to yourself, am I actually gonna win this or not? Because like, you know the other thing, the other part that I didn't talk about? What if you don't hit? You can also not hit on level 9. Right? Let's say you're rolling 40 gold. There's a 30% chance or so that you're not going to hit the 5 cost anyways. So you should always be careful about that as well. But that's like the idea. You always want to roll for upgrades if you have upgrades to roll for. You rarely want to go level 9 unless you're stable or you're very far ahead. If you're not very far ahead and you're not stable, you have to roll. You have to roll for upgrades or else you're just going to go 8th and you're going to lose anyways. Of course, there's certain conditions where you can win out. And that's like, for example, like sometimes with enforcers, you find one copy of Caitlyn, you win out. But, it is what it is. A lot of times you find them on level 8 if you roll really deep anyways. Now, so we're gonna get to the end of this video right now. Hopefully I explained it. Hopefully the examples were worthwhile. I know a lot of the examples were enforcer based, but that's just because enforcer is kind of like the, if I'm trying to say why should you fast 9, a lot of times enforcer is the easy example. But you can apply this concept to any comp, by the way, right? Academy Heimer, if you're still playing that. If you're playing around any comp like Sorks, you're looking for LeBlanc, right? Like there's lots of comps where they spike really hard off of 5 cost. And I'm sure you can extrapolate and then make those connections yourself or use it as an exercise for yourself. I'm trying to give you guys the mindset of what you should be looking for when you're looking at these comps. You can't just start the game and say 5. I'm gonna fast 9. That's my strategy every single game, right? You have to pay attention to what other people are doing because it's based on how strong they are as well. So for example, high HP and high econ, right? You want to be high rolling. You want to be stable on level 8 with a surplus of gold, right? If you start the game 2-1, you don't know if you're going to be stable on level 8. You don't know, like you can't know. No matter how good your spot is for a comp, you will not know if level 8 you're in a good spot to fast 9. So if you're taking augments and you're structuring your game plan around going fast 9, you're playing your enforcers, you think that you're going to go instantly to 9, you take like, all these augments that like cash out on level 9, I'm going to be him. No, it's like you have to really, really evaluate yourself when you get to level 8. If you're on level 8, you have a surplus of gold, and you have high HP, then you should go level 9. Additionally, you want to go level 9 if you have nothing else to roll for, right? That's really obvious, right? Like, let's say all of these are 2-starred, right? That's another condition, right? What are you rolling for, right? If all of these are upgraded, it's like, yes, there's nothing else I can use my gold on. Of course, I'm going to go 9. That's obvious, right? That's not what the point of this video is, but you know what I mean. Then augments that allow or incentivize leveling, right? I gave you some options of these augments, right? These are ones where you can more reliably structure yourself to go 9. Because the idea with these ones, right? Especially like, where is it? Sorry, I missed it. Like level up, for example. With this one, a lot of times, if you are high rolling, you can 4-2 level 9, right? If you have a lot of gold. With certain encounters like Scuttle Puddle. Like this one is very different. Because if you hit this and it's Scuttle Puddle, you're basically going to roll on 4-2 for all of your 4 costs and just have an increased chance of 4 costs and 5 costs. So you're just going to be making it more effective, right? You're going to do your 50 gold roll down for a 4 costs on level 9 instead of level 8, right? So you're just a lot more likely to hit your 3 upgrades. Like that's the idea with those type of comps. Sorry, level 8, level 9, like this, right? That's the idea there, but that's only with certain enabling augments, which is why it's very difficult to plan for. But tips and takeaways, right? Going 9 is often entirely dependent on the lobby. You have to be strong relative to the lobby. You have to have a lot of HP relative to the lobby. And you have to have the gold in order to make it to level 9. Rarely should you ever directly itemize towards 5 costs only. And the reason is that you don't know if you're going to hit the 5 costs, right? So for example, if you're playing Enforcers, you know, Caitlyn items that are really good are blue buff, right? And IE. If you don't hit a Caitlyn, who's holding the blue buff? Who's holding the IE? Usually it's something like this and like this. But like I said before, you don't want to be planning on itemizing the Caitlyn and then just have like a bunch of random items on like a Maddie, because, you know, of course, what if your roll down doesn't go good? What if you're level 8 and you only have a Vi 1 and this is your board and your board looks like shit? You know what I mean? If your board looks like shit, there's no way you're making it to level 9 because you're going to lose every single round. And if you're like 50 HP and every single turn you're losing 10 HP, minus 10 every single turn, 5 turns in a round, you're 0. You're dead. You're 8th already. You're dead before anomaly sometimes, right? So you have to roll really aggressively. But then if you're rolling really aggressively, now your items are on the wrong unit. They don't do anything here because you don't have the Caitlyn, right? This is a big pet peeve of mine. Every time I see somebody do this, I get so tilted. This happens all the time in my master's level lobbies. You know, maybe I'm the one that's in the wrong, so take this with a grain of salt because maybe I'm the dumbass. But like, this to me is one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in my life. It happens almost all the time, and I always see the person go 8th unless they high roll and they just randomly find a Caitlyn or they get bailed out and then they go first. And it's just such a bad way of playing the game. And I think if you ask anybody that's like a seasoned player of TFT that played a lot, they'll tell you that this is a bad mentality. So always don't fall into that trap, because if you're planning around Fast 9, like I said, it often is entirely dependent on the lobby. Depends on what you hit, depends on what other people hit, depends on how strong you are on stage 4, how much you can get away with greeting. You cannot just like stage 2 make items for Caitlyn and say it's a Caitlyn game, because you might never get to the point where you find a Caitlyn. Also, you should always gauge if rolling for upgrades is better than using your gold for leveling. That's what we talked about a lot. But anyways, thanks for watching. Hopefully that was an informative video. Hopefully it was helpful. I tried to be exciting when I talk about these things, right? I know that, like, you know, if you come to my streams, I'm very tilted all the time, but I simmer down very fast. So, you know, if you ever watch my stream VODs, please ignore everything that I say. The game of TFT is fun and it is good. You know, it's just really painful sometimes. Fast 9ing is something that's like very awkward. And I understand if you're a beginner and you struggle with this, because you just shouldn't be fast 9ing all that much, in my opinion. A lot of times, especially if you're starting out playing the game of TFT, you shouldn't fast 9 almost ever a lot of the times. Like when I first started learning TFT, I very rarely tried to use like greedy fast 9 strategies. I'm a player that, you know, most of my upbringing with TFT is going for the consistent strats, right? Making sure that I've guaranteed my units, guaranteed my placements, because a lot of times the sway of going like first 8th, first 8th, first 8th, first 8th, a lot of times you're like net negative a lot of the times when you play like that. So it's always more important, right? You can always, you know, see the candy, and maybe if it's like one game a week and you want a high roll, you can try for it. But you should always evaluate yourself, the other boards, and pay attention to the lobby tempo. Make sure that you're matching that lobby tempo, and make sure that you're not just like, you know, imploring a strategy that is completely outside of what everybody is doing, and then suffering because of it, right? It's something that takes skill to identify, and that's what this little mini guide series or whatever new sets of guides I'm talking about are mostly revolving around. But anyways, thank you for watching. Hopefully you had a great day, and see ya. Bye-bye.